Today, I want to start by telling the story of a friend of ours, Sheila. Sheila grew up in London, Ontario, with a loving yet troubled family. One day, her family situation worsened, and she was unable to remain at home. With limited choices and finances, she found herself living on the streets. It's November, and the streets are getting colder. Sheila needed to find an emergency shelter where she felt safe so she can heal, stay healthy, and avoid frostbite. Sheila quickly realized that every shelter has a complex list of criteria that she needs to evaluate herself against. Which shelters can she go to, and which can she not? Even after finding a shelter, it's hard for her to know if there's a better one out there. Is there one specifically for women, for Indigenous peoples like her, for youth? Finding the best place would help her heal and feel more safe. However, it's not that simple. After hours of research at her public library, she found one shelter she thought worked for her. She gave them a call, but the line was busy. After deciding to walk over and 40 minutes of travel, she found that they're full. Why wasn't this information posted anywhere so she could see it? After repeating this 5 more times, it's now 9:30 and she doesn't know what to do. How can we help Sheila secure the first right that we all deserve, a safe place to sleep? For the rest of us, if we need a place to stay, the process is simple. A trip to Expedia will get us the best hotel at the best price within seconds. Why haven't we built the same tools for Sheila to help her get the help she needs when she needs it more than us? The time to innovate is now. 70% of homeless individuals brought to hospitals have mobile phones, compared to 85% of individuals with homes. This minor difference indicates that technology can help bridge the gap and solve problems for people like Sheila. While they might not be smartphones, people without homes are increasingly digitally connected. Unhomed individuals deserve the same technical innovation that the rest of us have. Finding a suitable shelter shouldn't be a manual process where availability, locations, and eligibility criteria are not easily filterable or searchable. Currently, this process is keeping people on the streets, damaging their health, and harming their safety. Innovating in this space is essential for building social sustainability.
Our solution is ShelterFirst, an SMS text message bot that helps people in need of shelter find a bed as fast as possible. Shelters themselves are able to report bed availability updates live. This solves the pain point of walking for hours, burning unnecessary energy to be turned away from a shelter. Our algorithms match them to the best shelter for their needs. Indigenous peoples, racialized communities, women, and youth are eligible for specialized shelters. Not only is it important to ensure these people know about these specialized places, it's important to make sure that people who aren't eligible for these shelters don't go to them by mistake. Our technology leverages SMS, so it is accessible to homeless individuals who may lack internet access. You may be wondering how we did it. We use Firebase and a custom API to collect data about shelters, track daily occupancy, and match people to shelters based on their preferences. We use Google Cloud Platform's Directions API to calculate which shelters were the closest and prioritize those for matching and provide users step-by-step direction to the nearest shelter. We were able to capture users' locations through natural language, so it's simple to communicate where you are currently despite not having access to location services. We use the Twilio SMS API and webhooks built with Node.js and Express to facilitate all communications. Lastly, we built the front end with HTML, Sass, CSS, and JavaScript, and optimized performance through multi-threading and asynchronous calls. Our team was focused on responsive design methodologies to create a simple, pleasing environment for our users.
So now let's kick things off with a live demonstration. We're first going to create a new shelter in the ShelterFirst web system. This is designed as a management system for shelters to view their existing shelter accounts, as well as join our system with a custom invite code. We'll start by listing some key information which will be used by our matching algorithm later, both to match possible people to these shelters so they can receive support, as well as to provide this information through SMS for people so they can quickly find these shelters, call them if needed, and have directions to get there. So we're going to enter in the postal code, city, as well as information about the amount of open beds we have for the night, as well as the total beds that we have available. And then some additional preferences. We want to go above and beyond just matching somebody to a shelter. We want to find them the best shelter. So we're going to input the typical bedtime for the people who are at our shelter, as well as the typical wake-up times. Often shelters have strict rules as to when you are able to go to sleep and there's lights out and when the lights come on. We'll also tick off that this shelter is women's only and Indigenous peoples only, and that it's a quiet space with meals provided. We're then going to go to our dashboard where we can manage the settings for this shelter, enter our password, which would be delivered via email through an authentication API. And then now we can take a look at the occupancy settings for the night. This can be easily toggleable by management.
Now from the user setting, we're going to start by texting the SMS system, just anything. We can respond Y to continue through, otherwise N will abort this session. It will prompt us for some demographic questions, starting with our current location. Right now we'll put in Oxford Street and Warncliffe Road, just a generic intersection in London, Ontario. Now it's going to prompt us for more demographic questions, starting with are we LGBTQ+? We'll continue to answer these based on the preferences put in earlier. So we'll match it to the Indigenous female archetype. Now we continue to put in the answers here until we put in yes for Indigenous and yes for female. And now that brings us to asking for more additional preferences. So the matching algorithm uses these preferences to locate the best shelters for us. So we'll put we're in London to make the location more specific. We prefer a quieter shelter, but we don't need a meal. So these will all be used in the matching algorithm, and as well as our bedtime and our wake-up time. And that will, along with the distance traveled, determine the optimal shelters for us. So this one gives us the First Nations Women's Shelter, which was just inputted. We'll select one in order to select it. We'll type yes to get the directions, and it'll output the specific directions, 9 points of exactly where to go to reach this shelter.
Notice that we were able to update possible users of our shelters live about our occupancy. As a manager, now I want to update live as people come in, and maybe now I have to declare the shelter is full. Let's see how that affects our matching algorithm.
Now we have a new user here who's not in the system yet, so they're going to go through the whole setup process again. They're going to respond yes to the first question, as we did before, and they're at the same intersection as the last person, Oxford Street West and Warncliffe Road North. We'll answer the exact same responses in order to see what comes up now with the other demographic information. We'll answer yes to this. And now we also have the option to skip all of the additional preferences, which we'll select to do. This brings us to a different shelter with the same inputs that is not full now, but is farther away. We'll ask for directions, and it'll give us another step-by-step directions in order to reach this shelter.
As you can see, the real value with our product is matching users to the right shelter for them that actually has space for them in real time. Now, moving into our expansion plan, the first thing that we want to do is work with governments to embed into their smart city initiatives to gather a more robust and diverse set of data, which we can feed into our matching algorithms to provide more salient recommendations for our users. The second thing that we'd like to do is automate shelter availability updates at shelters using sensors and Arduinos and turnstiles at entrances and exits. By using these sensors and Arduinos to estimate the open bed availabilities at each of these shelters automatically, we negate the need for a front end for our users at shelters, aka the shelter administrators, which makes their job even more easy. We would have prototyped this technology, but we didn't have the Arduinos or Raspberry Pis on hand to do so due to the virtual environment and the COVID-19 pandemic. The third thing that we would like to do is use Twilio's voice API for toll-free service access on payphones. This would allow us to access the 15 to 30% of homeless users who don't have access to a mobile device.
The personalized solution we offer is the first step towards sustainable health for thousands of people that are threatened by the cold every winter. ShelterFirst can improve our society by reducing the barrier to support for those who need it. By extension, we improve the health and safety of unhomed individuals in our societies by keeping them off the streets and placing them in warm, safe places where they can begin their journey towards a better tomorrow. Thank you so much for listening.